Good morning, everybody. All right, let's get right into it. Heavy partying turned deadly yesterday when an SUV smashed into a police car at the security gates to Fort Meade in Maryland. Of course, also the headquarters for the NSA. Now, police opened fire on two men in the car after repeatedly asking them to stop. One of the men was killed and the other taken to the hospital. Both men were actually dressed as women, and reports say the SUV they were driving was stolen from another man they had been partying with the night before. It is unclear how the two ended up at the gates to the NSA. And deadline day has arrived to reach a deal over Iran's nuclear program. Now, top diplomats from several countries, including the U.S., have been negotiating in Switzerland. The goal for today's deadline is to come up with an agreeable outline that would be the basis for a long-term deal to be signed off on by the end of June. Now, the only problem is that there are still, of course, major kinks to be worked out. The core of the agreement centers on Iran curbing its nuclear program in exchange for lifting sanctions against the country. And we are learning more about that co-pilot that is believed to have intentionally crashed the Germanwings flight in the French Alps last week, killing all 150 people on board. According to reports, 27-year-old Andreas Lubitz had received psychotherapy before even getting his pilot's license and had been diagnosed as having suicidal tendencies. Lufthansa, the parent company of Germanwings, has not said whether they knew about the therapy before hiring Lubitz, but they did say he passed all medical screenings. Meanwhile, workers continue the arduous task of combing through the mountainside crash site. Back home, prosecutors have arrested their case in the trial of the accused Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. They ended with testimony from a medical examiner about the gruesome injuries suffered by the youngest victim of the bombings, 8-year-old Martin Richard. Some jurors openly cried as images were shown. Shortly after the prosecution rested, the defense began its case. Now, analysts say the goal is to show jurors that Tsarnaev's older brother, Tamerlan, was really the brains behind the bombing and to spare Dzhokhar the death penalty. All right, guys, last in your top 5 headlines. The governor of Indiana is on major damage control as outrage over the state's religious freedom law continues. Leaders are working on adding language to clarify the new law, making it known that the measure does not allow discrimination against gays and lesbians. They're hoping this will help quell some of the unrest around the act. Now, meanwhile, Arkansas is actually poised to become the next state to pass a similar Religious Freedom Act. Protests have, not surprisingly, already begun outside the state's Capitol building. I guess similar proposals have been introduced in more than a dozen states now. 19 other states have acts similar already on the books.
So this isn't new.
This isn't new, and you know how I feel about this. We talked about this yesterday. I'm at least glad that they're working on trying to add that language in so that, you know, it can't be discriminated against gays and lesbians. But at the same time, we all know how society is, unfortunately. With or without laws, people are going to discriminate regardless.
But at least voices are being heard.
That's
I
true.
agree.
You know,
Yeah,
when we stand up to something,
I just don't
we're gonna
understand
overturn
why it has to be in there anyway. We are free to do whatever we want to do, basically, in
Right,
this country
religion or
anyway.
otherwise.
Religion, to say whatever we want to say, you know, and why does a law have to be there? Either way, this is discrimination.
Yes,
you know, to
I
me.
agree.